I'm Shannon Ireland, your host of a Healthy Push podcast. I struggled with anxiety, panic disorder, and agoraphobia for 15 years. Everything used to be hard for me. Even just driving 5 minutes from my house used to feel impossible. But now I absolutely live for travel and adventure, and I experience lots of peace and joy. I've not only reclaimed my life, but I've helped hundreds of others to do the same. Here, we stop managing anxiety and instead we create a healthy relationship with it. One where you say goodbye to the anxious thoughts, symptoms, panic attacks, and fears, and you actually live your life. Forget complicated strategies, quick fixes, or the same old hacks you've heard 100 times before. Each week, I'll bring you simple, actionable advice and honest conversations that lead to real, long-term healing. You aren't just an anxious person, my friend. There are reasons why you're struggling with anxiety, and these are things you can fix and heal from. And this is where that journey begins. Welcome. You're right where you're meant to be. Hello, and welcome back to a Healthy Push podcast. Today, I am excited to have a really special guest with me, Dr. Tuesday Watts. She's a psychologist, a speaker, and a really incredible advocate for maternal mental health, which I feel like we don't see very often, and it's much, much needed. And as a mom herself, Tuesday really brings such a raw and vulnerable and real perspective to the highs and lows of motherhood. So, we're going to dive in and have a deep, honest conversation about the anxiety many moms face, especially the pressure around making the quote right choices for their kids and the fear of causing future trauma. Plus, we're going to talk about many other things I'm sure will pop up. So, if you're a parent who's ever felt overwhelmed, second guesses themselves, or just downright is exhausted by all of it, this episode is going to be for you. So, Tuesday, welcome to the Healthy Push podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to get stuck into this chat. I think it's going to be a good one.
Oh, it's going to be so good. So, start us off, just tell us a little bit about you.
So I am a mum of 3 slightly feral children. They are slightly feral, complete wildlings. They are the room wreckers, they are the noisemakers, they are full of energy, very intense energy. They are 6, 4, and 1, so they're all really young. I
Yeah.
know. It
Oh my
is
gosh.
it's chaos. It's chaos. But it's a familiar chaos because I was one of 3 children as well, and we were exactly the same age differences. I was the eldest of the 3. It was exactly the same age gaps between all of us. So it's a really familiar kind of chaos to me. But alongside being a mum, I'm also a psychologist. I used to be an academic psychologist, so lecturing at university, and my joy and my kind of, if you like, zone of genius, zone of practice was a room full of psychology students all eager to learn all about personality and individual differences. That was my thing, my jam. But these days work looks a bit different. I'm not in a university anymore, and my zone of, where I like to dwell and talk and speak and write about is motherhood and the kind of messiness of that experience, which, like, so many people shy away from really delving into the nitty-gritty of it. I think we see 2 ends of the spectrum, right? I think we see either crisis points and signs and symptoms, which is very important, very valid, or we see the glossy, perfect, Insta-worthy version of motherhood. And I think most of us are living in that messy in-between bit where no one really talks about how, you used the word brutal earlier, how brutal it can be. Honestly, how intense, how emotionally backbreaking it can be to dwell in that space. That's where I like to speak to in my work and in my content because I'm living it as well. I am in that messy in between, in the ebbs and flows of mental health. And yeah, so that's in a nutshell who I am, what I do, who I speak to, what I speak about. Yeah, that's me.
I absolutely love it. And I love that you show that messy in between because we really don't see that enough. And My friends will tell you, like, I'm that person who I don't make motherhood seem shiny, glitzy, like, always rainbows and butterflies because it's often really, really hard. So, I want to start because you talk a lot about humanizing motherhood, and I want to just get your take on what that means to you and why you think that's so important.
Oh, that is the most important thing to me above and beyond. I think it's important to me, especially because I came into motherhood as a perfectionist, a die-hard perfectionist. I put so much pressure on myself to do motherhood the right, in quotation marks, the right way, to check all the boxes, to do all of the things I thought I was supposed to do to be a good mom, to like get it right for my children, to make sure that they had everything they needed to be the most perfectly rounded individuals that they could be. And that pressure broke me. It broke me. And it was kind of in the wake of that destruction that I could see that I came into this thing with a really like inhumane idea about what it was gonna take to be a mother. I put really inhumane standards on myself, expectations on myself that I crushed myself trying to meet. And for me, I needed to rehumanize motherhood, the expectations, the standards, not just of, what it took to be a mother, but of myself. Like ultimately, I came into this thing with a really inhumane view of myself, like almost viewed myself as a machine, as a robot, just kind of ticking the boxes, but ignoring the fact that I am a limited capacity, full feeling human being who has, I can take as much as I can take. My tolerance isn't, indefinite. I have a limited bandwidth and capacity, and that's really normal. We are not designed to keep taking and giving and like relentlessly pursuing. It's too much. And so I needed for myself selfishly a more human understanding of motherhood and of myself as a full feeling limited capacity human being trying to find her way through the messy emotional landscape of motherhood. And it was in doing that for myself that I realized so many other people need that as well. And by sharing my own kind of messy, humanizing take on motherhood, I've realized just how many people need that experience humanizing a little bit more because we're just so hard on ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, you can see how much it's needed just in the amount of views your reels get. And I know I stumbled across your page and I was like, oh my gosh, this woman talks about stuff that people aren't talking about that is so important. And I resonated with so many posts. It same, like I walked into motherhood being such a perfectionist and thinking, you should, quote, "should" be able to just do it all. You should be able to figure it out. It shouldn't be so hard. And for me, everything felt hard and everything felt like, what am I doing wrong? Like everyone else makes this seem so easy and look so easy. And for me, every step of this feels incredibly challenging. And like you said, it wasn't just the mothering, it was also with myself, like this relationship I had with myself, it was so unrealistic and unhealthy. So I'm so glad that you said that because I know so many people are like, yes. So you talk a lot in your videos and just show the hardships of motherhood, like just the normal. I want to not even say hardships, it's just the normal shit in motherhood. And
Yeah.
this is this stuff that's less discussed. So, can you talk a little bit about the stuff that you really feel a lot of women, a lot of mothers are struggling with, but often don't talk about?
I mean, the biggest piece that comes up again and again and again is just it's how intense our emotional experiences are. We do experience a full spectrum of feelings and emotions that we just no one prepared us for, but also we don't tend to allow that. of ourselves because, like you just said, we don't tend to turn toward the thing itself. We never turn toward motherhood. We never turn toward the standards. We turn inward. And it's like, if I'm having these feelings, what does it mean about me?
Hmm.
What does that reveal about me if I feel a rage so explosive sometimes that it feels like so hot that it could burn the place down? What does that say about me as a mother? Does it mean I'm a bad person? I'm not cut out for this? My children deserve better. We tend to turn toward ourselves when we experience very normal human emotions. We have brains that are equipped for rage and anger and sadness and grief and resentment. And how amazing that is, by the way, that we have these brains with this capacity for the full spectrum of feelings. We tend to resist and fight back against. And I know that's what I was doing for years. I wasn't allowing myself to feel the feelings. I was going toe to toe with them. I was fighting back against the big feelings that I was having, also while telling my children it was okay for them to have the same feelings, like turning toward them and saying, "It's okay that you feel angry. Anger is like it's fine if you feel angry." And yet toward myself, I was like, "Oh, why do I feel so angry all the time? What's wrong with me?" Like, how can we have this strange double standard that we set for ourselves around the way that we meet and talk about and experience our feelings, but it's ultimately it that doesn't come from us. It comes from our own experiences of childhood, right? It's like you can trace that back to the way that emotions were talked about and experienced or not allowed when we were growing up. You can trace that back, and I think we are so aware of that as well. We are so aware of where it comes from, of what it's done for us. We're so mindful that we don't wanna do that for our children, so we're trying to hold that space for them, and we're kind of silencing ourselves and stifling our own feelings in the process, and I think that is the biggest piece that I cross paths with in my content creation on my platform, is that mothers are scared to feel their feelings because what does it mean about them for having them in the first place?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a big one. I remember you're like talking and I'm reliving all this stuff in my head, right? And I think there's just so much going on physiologically too, right? With your body and your hormones. And maybe you do acknowledge at one point, like maybe I did, like there's so much going on with my body and I've just been through this really big event. But still, I often came back to what you said, like maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Because interestingly enough, like I had a mom who was motherhood was the greatest thing and I loved it and it was like amazing and I'm like, why is that not my experience? Like, cuz that is not something I would say. And then I think another part of this, right, is you internalize that piece too and you're like, what does that say about me as someone who isn't really enjoying a lot of aspects of this and is finding a lot of this to be really hard? But I'm so glad you talked about the emotional part because I think that carries such a massive weight for so many people. And we not only shy away from our emotions, right? We don't often want to face them, but we don't talk about them. Like, we are not walking around, especially with other moms, being like, I have been so angry today, or I've been so short, or I have been like really not in a good place. Like, it's just not
Yeah.
stuff that we share, right?
No. We don't. It feels too ugly to say that out loud. It just feels too uncomfortable to admit that sometimes I get really angry. Like, what an
Yeah.
ugly thing to say, but what a human thing to say and to experience. Like, that's really normal. I mean, if you didn't feel angry, if you had a need that was unmet or you felt like really unheard or really powerless, if you didn't have the normal emotional response to that, like, that would make you not the full feeling human being that you are, and I don't know, somewhere along the way, we've just dehumanized ourselves in this process, and it's funny you mention about your mum, on the one end of the spectrum, loving every minute, and everything looked wonderful and amazing. My mum just seemed to power through. Like whatever came her way, she didn't say anything about anything. It was just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, we're moving on. And there was never like an acknowledgement of this is really hard, or I'm really angry, or I'm really sad. It was just kind of quietly swept away, and we just kind of internalized the message that some feelings are just not worth talking about.
Sure.
And so that's kind of my entry point into motherhood was some feelings are not worth bringing up. Some feelings we don't talk about. Some feelings, I mean, almost looks like uncomfortable to have them. And maybe they're not allowed in the first place. Maybe we don't mention them because they're not allowed. So there's a lot of conditioning and messaging that has happened along the way that we are becoming more aware of. It's firmly wired in at this point, and we're trying to kind of undo that whilst parenting our children with more awareness than ever before of how we can get this thing wrong and all of the ways that we can traumatize them or fail them or, just down to everything, the ways that we talk to them, the way we approach emotional experiences. We've got expert advice on every step of the way, and we're holding on to that advice. We're holding on to our experience, which is messy and complicated and just emotionally layered, whilst trying to parent our children in real time. We're holding on to so much, and we are limited capacity human beings. Like, there's only so smoothly that's going to go. And I think we need so much more compassion for ourselves than what we currently give.
Oh, so much more compassion. And it's so funny that you just mentioned that because I was just thinking, back when my daughter Amelia was really young, I was looking at all the information, right? Like looking at social media and looking at what I should do, what I shouldn't do, how things should look. And I got so sucked into all of that and then intertwined with my perfectionism tendencies. It was like,
Same.
okay, like I just need to do. And I remember my mom saying so many times, Shannon, I had no like guidebook. There was no social media. You were like, you don't need all of this stuff. And I think that's such another big layer too for moms now in the world, the culture that we live in. It's like you don't need all of this stuff. There is so much that you already have that inner knowledge and wisdom. And when you go outside of yourself, right, and you're absorbing all this stuff and you're like, I got to do this and I got to try that. And it just makes all of those emotions even more heightened. And I would say, especially emotions like anxiety, right? Like, because then you have all this anxiety about, am I doing the right thing? Am I going to mess my kid up? Am I going to do the wrong thing? Like, it's so overwhelming.
Yeah, it's utterly overwhelming. Like all of that stuff, all of the how-tos and the shoulds and supposed tos are taking up so much of our capacity. That in itself reduces our tolerance and our bandwidth to deal with what we're dealing with, I think. And I think there's another layer to this as well that I seem to get a sense of on social media is that today, I think we're seeing more and more of the emotional self suppression, but sold back to us in these hacks and tips and strategies. Any given day, I'll open up my social media and I see another hack for, you know, bringing my nervous system back down, like hacking it into submission almost to like cope with what I'm coping with, and like tips and tools. And I think it's almost like ways to reduce our or suppress our feelings in the ways that we probably already are, but packaged up as like self improvement and self optimization and self like do the work. And you know what I mean? There's this whole narrative that's on social media today. We're obsessed with optimizing every square inch of our lives, including the way we experience our emotions. And I think that just well, I think unhealthy is the word, but to me, I'm pushing back against that at the minute because
Yeah.
I'm actively trying to do differently, and at this point, I just don't need another person telling me take a deep breath and move on, because that's what I've been doing my whole life.
Yeah, same, same. I'm so glad that you're pushing back against that because I think,
We have to.
yeah, it's this idea, right, that we all get sold on that there are you can just hack your way out of feeling your emotions and being human.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
there is no hack, right, for bypassing the very like human part of us that has these big emotions, that has a lot of hardships. And it's not, I can just deep breathe. Or, I did this post recently that was not received the best by some people, but it's like, the whole popping sour candies or using, it's like we can't make our feelings go away with these hacks. And it's so unhelpful when we try to do those things because it just adds so many more emotions to the mix. Like we were saying anger, right? But there's also sadness, right? And like it's so normal and makes sense to feel sadness when you're mothering
Yeah.
and anxiety. And it's like all these emotions that make perfect sense. We're told like, no, 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 you don't need to feel this. Just do this, right? And then you'll be better. It's
Exactly.
like, what?
Exactly. That's not what we need. We need a way of understanding what the feelings are asking for. What are they trying to tell us? What's the signal embedded in that experience? Like for me, it's not about hacking our way out of the hard bits of motherhood. It's about being able to tolerate them and to sit with them and be like, okay, I'm angry today. What's this about? What am I feeling so angry about today? Is it that I feel really unheard right now? I feel really unseen. How can I meet myself where I need to be right now and, try and make myself feel a little bit more seen, a little bit more validated? How can I like use that feeling as a springboard to ask for what I need instead of just take a deep breath. Like, that's not what we need right now, but that is the kind of thing that we are just constantly sold on. Like, I mean, the wellness culture is just, I mean, it's on another level these days. Oh, you just need a 27-step wellness routine that starts at 5 a.m. before your children wake up so that you can get ahead and be in the right energy for the day. Oh, okay. I'll just ignore the fact that I was up 6 times last night and I have 3 children all screaming their demands at me. Like, I'll just ignore my need for sleep because, who needs it anyway? And I'm sure these 27 steps are absolutely vital. But yeah, that it's just another level.
Oh, I know. The wellness, when I hear all this stuff,
Oh,
I like just it's so interesting, right? Because you often, I don't know, oftentimes I do feel like this is coming from people who don't have children, don't have this experience, right, of having to navigate such a hard thing. But sometimes it is. Sometimes it is coming from moms, and it's even more challenging for me to wrap my brain around it because I'm like, you know what it is like to
yeah.
experience it, and
Feels like a betrayal.
yeah, it's like, no, I cannot wake up at 5 AM and go down and get a glass of water and then turn on my red light machine and do a 25-minute meditation, and then it's like, no, like, I can't do that, that's not practical.
I refuse. I
Yeah,
refuse. It's more than I can't. I refuse
yes.
because that's not realistic for me at all. But we see more and more of them. We see more and more of them. And honestly, at this point, even the word wellness, like, has given me a bit of an ick because it's just been taken and they've run ahead with it and it turned it into something that is so inhumane, the versions we see. And that's not what we need. We need to be able to sit with our feelings. We need more emotional literacy. That's what we need. We don't need another hack or a routine or a mindset or any of those other things we're, currently being sold.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into this too, but it's like more feeling our feelings and more connection.
Yeah. To self. Yeah.
Yes. I love how you said, what do I need? Checking in with yourself versus how do I escape this? Because I think there's so much peace there. Okay, let's shift a little bit and talk about some of the anxiety that comes up in motherhood, which there's so much anxiety.
Every way you turn.
Right? Like, so much anxiety. So, a lot of moms feel the anxiety around doing the right things, right? The quote, right things, making the right choices. Why do you think this pressure feels so intense, and where does it come from?
In my opinion, I think the pressure is it feels so alive for all of us because we are now at a point in history where we have a hyper awareness of all of the ways it can go wrong because we're all unpacking our own childhood experiences, traumas, and uh, we're aware because we're told, because we are fed it via social media, what's led us to that point, what creates trauma, what are the do's and don'ts of parenting, what should you avoid, how can you actively get it wrong, like what to do, what not to say. Like we have all of this information. We have access to more information than ever before, literally at the tips of our fingers. And I think that is undermining our sense of self-trust, our ability to judge, what feels right for us versus what we think we should do, what's the right thing to do. I think that's created a kind of perfect storm for us when it comes to our anxiety is that, we are aware of what our childhood experiences did for us, how they shaped us. We're aware of what the experts say about what we should and shouldn't do. And there's that primal need and instinct to want to get it right for your children, to want to do the best possible job for them, because that's, what we're programmed for. We're programmed to take the best possible care of our children. And we're trying to hold all of these pieces together. And it creates so much tension, so much anxiety, and so much overthinking, self-doubt, like that inner conversation and narrative is just constantly ticking over, isn't it? Like constantly second guessing. I know I experienced that quite a lot, or used to. I feel like I've been able to turn down the volume a bit on that, but it's a lot. We're holding a lot, and it's all kind of running loops in our head all the time.
Yeah, there's so much more awareness, I think, because so much more is being talked about, and we can look at our own childhoods and see what we went through and the patterns it created, and working through that and going to therapy and talking about it more. And it's so great that there are so many like layers right now of we are talking about things more. We are seeking out help. We're getting that support, but I think it also has created a lot of that intense pressure of like, I don't want my children to go through any hardship, right? I don't want them to go through anything that I went through. And it's like, well, there's also the balance, right? Of it's going to happen because that's life. Like there are hardships and we can't prevent everything. But I love how you talk about the self-trust, right, and self-doubt because I think the more we look outside, right, and the more we're trying to get it all right and do it all right, the less we actually trust ourselves and feel that peace that we all are so deserving of in mothering and just in life in general.
Yeah, massively. I mean, self-trust is key for me, and I have found that it is the ultimate antidote to perfectionism. Like when I was a perfectionist, ultimately I didn't trust anything about myself. I didn't trust that I was good enough. I didn't trust myself to do the right thing. I didn't trust myself to get it right. But over time, I've managed to kind of unpick that perfectionist mindset and realize that ultimately what I need is a really strong foundation of self-trust. I need to be able to not question every decision I make, every thought that I have, every interaction that unfolds between me and my children. I need to be able to trust that it's enough, that I'm enough, and that I will know exactly the right thing for me and my family. I don't need anyone else to tell me that. I don't need, constant external input because internally I feel like I have a sound enough foundation to be able to use that as a springboard for the kind of motherhood experience I want to have. But I mean, building that has taken me years. It makes it sound so easy, but it takes so much, like, it's in the little micro actions as well, building self-trust, especially if you are coming into this thing as an extreme perfectionist, which it sounds like we both were.
Yeah.
Like, it takes relentlessly showing up in really tiny ways just to show your brain, to give your brain the evidence that actually I can do this. And that takes time. It really does.
Yeah. I love this. So I was actually going to ask you, like, if somebody listening right now, right, is like, I am always second guessing myself, or I'm constantly worrying if I'm doing things right. Like, what advice would you have for them? But I think the self trust piece is such a big piece, and is how you can feel less overwhelmed, right? Less anxiety and less of that worrying.
Mm.
What's something that has really helped you to build that self-trust?
I think self trust can feel like a really abstract concept that's kind of hard to hold on to for a lot of people. And I know years ago, if someone had said to me, "Oh, you just need to build some self trust," I would have been like, "Okay, what does that mean exactly? How do I do that? What does that look like?" Like, again, the perfectionist in me would have been like, "How can I get self trust right?"
Give me the book, give me the
Yeah,
guide.
literally, give me the guide. I will inhale it in
Yep.
a day, and I will tell you everything you need to know about self-trust. But for me, it's been about tuning into my body's signals. So for so many years as a perfectionist, I got used to ignoring myself, ignoring my signals when I just pushed through and did all of the things that I thought I was supposed to do, all of the things I was told I should be doing. You tend to end up ignoring yourself a lot, ignoring that tight feeling in your chest or in your stomach when someone says, "No, do it this way," but you wanna do it that way. You tend to push down that kind of somatic feedback that you're getting from your body, in the name of trying to get it right. And for me, it was like I had to really actively, consciously tune into, right, what am I doing and why am I doing this? A kind of practical example, when my firstborn was a baby, I felt like I had to do all of the baby classes with him to get it right. So I was doing baby massage, baby sensory, baby yoga, like name it. I was doing it with him, all in the name of getting it right for him and making sure he had the best possible starts, like his cognitive development was supported, all of that's, I'd read all the books, and it kind of came down to me rushing around, pushing past all of my discomfort to get to a class that both of us hated anyway. He would literally scream the whole way through. I would come out in tears, and I had to kind of turn toward myself and be like, "Why am I doing this? Like, where has that actually come from? Where did the idea come from that this is something that I have to be doing, and look at what it's doing to me. Look at the discomfort. Look at how I come out feeling like completely drained and just frazzled and done for the rest of the day. Is this in line with what feels good for me?" And ultimately it wasn't. And so I cancelled all the classes, but that was my first act. That was my first act of self-trust. It was like, I don't want to do this, so I'm not going to do it. And I don't care if that's what the baby books say that I have to do. I don't want to, and it doesn't feel like it fits for me and my child. So I'm going to take another route. And that was my first stand against, the external standards and expectations. But in that moment, it told my brain, you can make decisions that, you know, don't come from elsewhere. You can make your own decisions according to what feels right for you. And that's how you build. It's in those daily, like tiny decisions and ways that you show up in a way that feels good for you, not for anyone else. But and that's how it kind of starts to ripple out, doesn't it?
Oh, I love that you said this. Like, listening to yourself and honoring your own needs and wants and what feels good for you is so freaking powerful. It's like I'm going back to the whole wellness stuff, right? Like, we do all these things and we don't even enjoy them. It doesn't even give us what we're wanting. It's like,
No.
I'm just meditating because that's what I'm told to do. And I'm doing yoga and I don't even like it. And it's like, well, gosh, it's not going to be helpful, right? If it doesn't feel good. So I love that you said that. It's just so insane that we're all walking around, I think, doing so many things to feel better, but we're not actually listening to ourselves and checking in of like, does this actually feel good? Like, do I want to be doing this?
Yeah.
So I think it's really hard in motherhood, like finding any sort of balance. I swear, like balance is not a thing. But what would you say? Like, you want to protect your kids, right? You want what's best for them. You want to be able to give them all the things and do all the things, but we can't always have that control, right? I think a lot of this comes down to control. Like we want to make sure we're not screwing them up and we're not doing things wrong and all of that. Like how can we let go of some of that control that we have to want to like get it right and protect and do all the things?
I mean, it's so hard, and firstly, the word balance, if I like, you see the word balance everywhere, like, "Oh, to find balance." It just in my mind, it doesn't exist. The word that I like to use instead is harmony. I try to strive for the parts of myself and my life and my children living in harmony. The different facets of who I am and who I want to be living in harmony with each other, like all of my feelings living in harmony, like the anger and the love and the pride and the joy and the resentment and the shame and the fear, like all of those parts of me and the feelings. I want them to be able to live in harmony with each other because that's what it means to me to be this full spectrum human being. And so that's what I tend to strive for. That takes being able to let go of some control. And coming into this thing, I was the most one of the most controlling people you could ever meet. And that's a part of the perfectionist thing as well, right? It's being able to control people's perceptions and the outcomes and yourself, like keeping yourself under a really tight grip. And I think for me, a big part of learning to let go of control is realizing that the world isn't gonna end when I do release that control. So if I do make mistakes and if I do show up in the ways that I don't want to, if I do shout, if I do feel angry, it's not the end of the world. I haven't caused irreparable damage, and actually, it benefits my children to be able to see me in my full feeling, imperfect, messy human glory. And that gives them permission to be the same thing with me, to be that imperfect, messy, sometimes chaotic human being. I want them to feel safe to be that because ultimately I never did. I never felt that level of safety being that messy, full spectrum human being. It's taking a lot of unlearning to get to this point. But realizing that not only is the world not going to end, it gives them permission to be their full feeling selves, but also I can repair. When there's a rupture, I can repair. And actually, that serves our bond more deeply than me being a relentlessly perfect parent. It serves them more for me to rupture and repair than for me to be emotionally perfect at all times. It's just the power of being able to turn around and take accountability for yourself and have those open and honest conversations with your children. I have them all the time because I shout
Mhm.
and I lose patience and I'm not a perfect human being. I'm a really sensitive, really limited capacity. I have such a small sensory cup. I'm a highly sensitive person, so I absorb quite a lot very quickly, and that tends to come spilling out of me. But the conversations I have with my children remind me that it's okay to be that version that doesn't have control at all times. I feel no shame in turning to them and being like, "I shouted earlier," and they'll be like, "Yeah, and that wasn't the right thing. I didn't really want to do that." It's okay to feel frustrated. I felt frustrated earlier, and that's what that was really about. And that's fine, by the way, to feel frustrated and angry. But maybe there are better ways for me to voice that to you. And they'll agree. And they'll say, and I'll say, "I'm sorry." And they'll say, "It's okay." And that's that. We move on. And then the
Yeah.
next day, they will do something and make a mistake, and they'll turn around and say, "I'm sorry I did that. I didn't mean to do that." And that we're in that kind of just messy human relationship where there's no control or predictability, but it feels very emotionally safe to just be who you are in that, to just be a full feeling, imperfect human being who makes mistakes sometimes. And that's fine. And we're all learning as we go. And like my kids will say that all the time, oh, we're still learning. And I say, yeah, we all are. We're all still learning. Me too. And that's fine. That's okay. But I think the version of motherhood I held in my mind when I came into this thing is there's no room for mistakes. There's no room for error. Like there's no error margin in this thing. You have to get this like on the mark. Otherwise, it's a failure. But again, that's the perfectionist. Anything less than excellence is a failure. There's no room for anything less than excellence. But that's not real life motherhood. Real life motherhood, there has to be room for mistakes. There has to be room for rupture and repair and accountability and all of the humanness.
Oh, I'm so glad that you brought this up because I'm thinking back to what you were saying about your mom, which is very similar to how my mom was, but I think a lot of hers was living in survival. She was married, but pretty much a single mom and just like going and doing and you never really saw her have the emotions because it was like she just got it done. And that's where a lot of my perfectionism tendencies come in, I'm sure. But it's like having a mom who's just powering through and doing it all and getting it done, and you're not seeing the feeling side of things. It's creates so much of that trickiness, right? When you then become a mom and you're having so many feelings, and just like you, I'm also a highly sensitive person. And so I have so many feelings, and kind of the messaging in the background, right, was like, this is not okay to have all these feelings. And like, just keep going, just keep doing. And there was that layer of, I don't want people to see this. I don't, and I didn't even tell my mom how hard it was. And she was like, I wish you would have said something. And I'm like, well, yeah, me too. But I had so much of that messaging of like, you should just do it and be able to do it and power through. And it, it was just so hard. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. But also, it kind of leads to this other piece, this really beautiful piece of we often do try to hide our emotions from ourselves, not face them, but we also do it, I think, in relation to our kids. Like, we don't want our kids to see that we get angry, that we get anxious, that we get sad. And I work with a lot of people who experience a lot of anxiety, and they're like, I try my best to hide it from my kids. And I'm like, oh gosh, no, please don't do that. Right. So, can you speak a little bit about that? You did a little, but I think it's so
Yeah.
powerful when we hear this messaging of like, it's good and healthy for your kids to see you experiencing emotions and to talk about it.
I mean, that so many of us feel that, right? We just want to protect our kids from the ugly, the uncomfortable, the nitty-gritty, the parts of motherhood that we never heard spoken out loud, the feelings that were never given the language for. But I mean, I've been doing a lot of writing and researching around this at the minute as well. There is actually research which suggests that emotional suppression, like trying to hide our feelings to protect our children, doesn't protect them in the way that you think it does. Because what it does is it makes us more disconnected and less emotionally available for our children. We want to be as emotionally available as we can for them, but trying to hide those parts of ourselves, trying to like keep bits back from them makes it harder for them to connect with us ultimately as their parent. And I mean, there is research backing this up. I've been digging into a lot of this lately. And I think for a lot of parents, that will be a real comfort. That will be a real permission slip to just feel all their feelings and not try to push back against them. And also, pushing back against them, like that doesn't quite work in the way that we think it will either. Like that emotional suppression or thought suppression, it often has that rebound effect, doesn't it? So, like, I use this example all the time with people, don't think of a pink elephant. If you say that to someone, don't think of a pink elephant, don't think. immediately what comes to mind is the pink elephant, because as you try and fight and resist a thought, your brain just makes it louder and more intrusive and more invasive. And that's almost what we're seeing with our feelings, right? We're pushing down the anger, we're stuffing it down, swallowing our rage, ignoring the resentment that's quietly simmering away beneath the surface. But actually, it's just kind of festering and getting louder and getting it more invasive and taking up, bigger parts of our lives. But if we could just like meet the feeling as it happens, name it as it happens, verbalize it. Like I do a lot of verbalizing around my children because it helps me process in the moment, but it helps them to give language to what they're observing as well. So if I feel myself like my patience is going and my voice is getting louder, I'm like, my brain is finding this really hard. I'm feeling like no one's listening to the sound of my voice, so it's getting louder, and they can observe that in real time, and so can I. And that almost like short circuits the reaction that, ultimately erupts at the end of it. And I think that process, that messy emotional process, is so important for us as parents, but also our children. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not a child expert. I'm not an expert in children's development. So there might be some clinical psychologists listening to this who have other opinions and ideas. This is my experience as a mother who struggles with emotional expression, who has for most of her life suppressed her feelings and can see the impact of that, who does a lot of reading and writing and researching in the field of emotional expression in parenthood and what that does to your relationship with your children. That's my opinion and my experience around that. And I think ultimately our children are better off, because I know I would have been, and I know that so many mothers would have been as well, if they had just seen that emotion met head on, named honestly, felt, expressed, talked about, created space for, and then moved on rather than stuff down, quietly brush away, try and lock in a cupboard somewhere, and then deal with it when ultimately it comes seeping out or exploding out, like so many of us have felt.
I so agree with you. Couldn't agree with you more. And I think our experiences as moms, right, is enough. And I think, yeah, there's different opinions, right? But it's
Mhm.
so incredibly powerful that you're sharing your experiences paired with your education, because this is the stuff that people don't talk about, that it is so helpful just when you see and hear another mom sharing stuff that you feel like, "That's what? Like, I feel that way," or "I think that," or "I had that experience today," and it's just so valid and humanizing, and it really lifts a lot of that, like, just ick feeling and pressure and
Yeah.
the tricky emotions. So I
Yeah.
am just so happy that you share everything that you do, because I know that it's so helpful to so many people, and I'm really excited for my community to like dig more into you and connect with you. So Tuesday, if people want to find you and connect with you and learn more from you, where can they find you?
Thank you so much for your kind words, first of all. But they mean so much more than you know. But people can find me on Instagram. My handle is at I am Dr. Tuesday. That's where you'll find me talking about the messy, the nitty gritty, the honest, raw, like unspoken parts of motherhood. That's where you'll find me sharing all of that stuff.
Yeah, and trust me, you'll want to go find her, because on the days especially that I'm having a hard time, I'm like, okay, it's not just me.
No. No, it isn't, it isn't, and I think that's what keeps so many mothers stuck in shame and, like, quietly coping with their experiences on their own. It's just that belief that you are the only one in the world who's having feelings like that, like ugly feelings like that simmering away beneath the surface, when actually you're not the only one. And if only we spoke more openly about it, I think you might actually find them easier to cope with.
I always say, if there were more vulnerability in the world, which I know being vulnerable is so, so hard, there would be so much more peace. Like if we could all allow ourselves just to be more human and to
Mhm.
be seen as being human, like
Yeah,
life would be a lot less hard.
it would. It really would.
Well, thank you so much, Tuesday. This has been such a good conversation, and I'm just so happy to be connected with you now.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
I hope you loved this episode of A Healthy Push. If you have, I'd be so grateful if you could leave me a rating and review wherever you're listening to this podcast. This helps people to find the show and get the support they need. And if you know someone who could use a little push, be sure to share this episode with them. And for even more support, head over to ahealthypush.com for show notes and loads of tips, tools, and inspiration to help you on your recovery journey. I'll see you next week.